views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, I'm Andrew Seeger.
And I'm Casey Candela.
We're reporters with WFUV, an NPR affiliate radio station located on the Rose Hill campus of Fordham University in the Bronx.
Welcome to Bronx Connections, an ongoing collaboration between WFUV, BronxNet, and the Norwood News. Today, we're taking a look into some of the most talked about races in the Bronx this election cycle. In the past, we've worked together to cover issues like rezoning and development, food-related issues affecting the Bronx, and others.
Today, we're going to be honing in on the race to represent New York's 14th Congressional District, which includes parts of the Bronx and Queens, and we'll also be talking about a heated race for a New York Senate seat, 34 in the Bronx.
Joining us are two fellow WFUV reporters, Julia Agos and Natalie Migliori. They were able to speak with two of the candidates in those races, and they'll be sharing some parts of those interviews with us shortly.
Let's start with the race people have been talking about coast to coast in the past few months. In New York's 14th Congressional District, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez pulled off a huge upset when she unseated incumbent Joe Crowley in the June primaries.
Crowley was a top-ranking Democrat in the House, and it was the first time we've seen a grassroots candidate like Ocasio-Cortez pull off such a challenge in a really long time.
But not a lot of attention has been given to her other opponent, the one she'll be facing off with on the general ballot in November. She's running against Republican Anthony Pappas, and Natalie had a chance to speak with him.
Hi, Natalie. How's it going?
Hi, guys. It's going well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.
So, Natalie, you got to talk to Pappas, and why don't you give us some information about his campaign?
Right. So he's running in the 14th district, as you guys said, and he's really trying to reach out to the community. When I met up with him, he had just come back from speaking with people in the Bronx and handing out flyers and really talking to them. And after our interview, he stayed in a park that we met up in, and he talked with people as well. So he's really trying to get to know the community and have them get to know him. And he's focusing on Republican values in this election as well.
Right. So I think name recognition might be something that he's really working towards building up, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has made such a name for herself from across the country. So what else do you know about his background, his family life, life before the campaign?
Right, so he's actually currently a professor at St. John's University. He really was interested in education from a young age. He went to MIT, and then he went to Yale University for further education after that. So he really feels like he's prepared after teaching and working with students at St. John's for a position of listening to people and, you know, understanding what people want.
And he was raised in the district too, right?
Yes, so he moved from Lincoln Center. He lived where Lincoln Center once was, and he then moved to Astoria when he was 12. But he was always a city boy. He went to school in the city afterwards, and he's really excited to have the opportunity to maybe serve.
So, Natalie, did he grow up in the district?
Yes, so he actually grew up in the city until he was 12, and then he moved to Astoria, and he kind of talks about that in the next clip.
All right, let's see the clip.
All right, well, to get an idea of my childhood, you can go back to one of the world-famous movies that was filmed on the street where I grew up, and which covers that area. Can you guess which it is? What the movie is? West Side Story.
Okay.
So that was filmed on the block where I lived. You know, we were moved out because they were going to demolish the buildings there to put up a Lincoln Center. And before the demolishment was complete, they shot the portions of West Side Story in the area. But you know, again, I don't claim that my childhood was entirely like the movie, but it gives you a reference point. Basically, I grew up in a loving extended family. With my maternal grandparents and the other relatives. that were here in New York City. When I went to the first grade, I didn't understand English because at home everybody spoke Greek. So it was a little difficult for me in the beginning, being very independent. Since I didn't understand what the teacher was saying, I would just run out of the classroom.
So it's clear that he feels at home in the district, and I think he also feels at home in the courts. You know, he's been working through a divorce now for 14 years, and he thinks that judicial reform is a key issue that he wants to work on if he were elected. So do you want to tell us a little bit about his stance there and some other key issues?
Yeah, I think he's voiced his concern on how judges take advantage of their immunity, and he really wants to work with that. A couple of other key topics that he talked about was tax reform, and also I was really interested to hear his take on immigration since he grew up in a family full of immigrants. So that's the next clip as well.
All right, let's see it.
I'm sympathetic to the immigrant experience. Certainly my parents and other relatives shared it, but I believe the immigration problem should be handled in a sensible way. So I'm in favor of having like secure borders and not a free-for-all where anybody can just come here. I point out the population of Mexico is 125 million. Indonesia is the fourth most populous country. 260 million is the population. It's right after the US in terms of population size. So if you just say we're not going to have any controls, I don't think that's to the benefit of the citizens here. The immigrants will compete with jobs, and they'll need financial support. Whereas if you control it, then you can have a sensible policy in terms of the numbers that you admit and what the criteria are.
So his stance on immigration probably isn't too popular in a district where 46 to 7% of residents are actually Hispanic. And on his campaign site, he's hit Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a Latina woman, calling her the newest extremist and tying her with a quote-unquote socialist invasion. So how do you think what do you think his fears are if she were to beat him and get elected?
Well, of course, they have different beliefs. They're from different parties, and they have different backgrounds. But he is really concerned that she's just going to move the district in a different direction that he wants to go in, and it's very unfavorable to him because, of course, he wants to work on tax reform. He wants to have tighter borders, and he, again, is really passionate about this judicial reform and really holding judges accountable.
Natalie, the theme of today's Bronx Connections is off the trail. So you spoke with him, off the campaign trail, not exactly getting too much into politics, but also about his family life, life before running for office. So is there anything interesting that he shared? Yeah,
well, still, although he's not necessarily speaking it every day, he still fluently speaks Greek. And so there were some times where he, like he mentioned before, he didn't understand the language. But after he started understanding it, he really took to the material, as he will say in the next clip.
All right, let's see it.
And so, second grade, did that kind of kickstart your academic career? Because you went on to gain such academic success when you started at MIT, then you attended Yale. So, where did that come from?
Everybody's inspiration comes from different sources. You're encouraged by your parents and your relatives. You show an interest in, achieving good grades. The teachers that you have play a big role. So I was blessed with, inspirational teachers, and I responded to, the material they were trying to impart.
So professionally, Pappas is a professor at St. John's University. He teaches economics and finance. He seems to maybe have left his Greek behind. Natalie, what do you think?
No, he has not. He actually was reciting the first line of the Iliad to me, and that's in the next clip.
So let's hear that.
Can you recite your Iliad, the Iliad in Greek again?
Okay, this is the beginning. It's Minin ai de thea piliadeo achilleo sulomenin, which means a single goddess of the wrath of Achilles, the son of Peleus. And that wrath then went on to affect the Greeks, and they fought the Trojan War and so forth.
So we're really not expecting any surprises, Natalie. Democrats outnumber Republicans in that district 6-1, and everyone basically took Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's primary win as, she's going to win the general election. So we're not really expecting a surprise there.
That's right. He wasn't exactly the GOP's first candidate. The Queens GOP chairman said he wasn't their prime choice, and he is a candidate they're not exactly proud of to run. So it's an interesting race from the Republican side, but we'll see what happens in November.
All right, so moving into Julia's race, there's been a lot of parallels between what we saw in the primaries in Ocasio-Cortez's race and the New York State Senate District 34.
Right, so in the same way we had a young woman challenge a white male established incumbent candidate, Alessandra Biaggi took on incumbent state senator Jeff Klein.
And this was an especially heated primary because of the role Klein played in the state Senate. He controlled the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference, which was a group of rogue Democrats that caucused and sometimes voted with Republicans.
And since Democrats only held a one-seat majority in the state Senate, this tipped the balance of power to the GOP. Now, 6 of those 8 IDC members have been voted off the ballot in the primaries by more progressive challengers, Biaggi being one of them.
So Julia Agos is here. She was actually able to sit down with Alessandra Biaggi. Hi, Julia.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you talked to Biaggi about not only her campaign, but some of the aspects of her personal life, what she does off the trails. So was there anything that stuck out to you, particularly about, who she is as a person?
Yeah, so I actually spoke to her on a Friday evening. It was about 6 o'clock. And like you said, it was supposed to be off the trail, but we met in a park, and she was, in fact, getting ready to go canvass in a nearby residential building. So it seems like her life almost bridges that gap between on and off the trail with, she's very focused all the time on getting to know her constituents and focused on her campaign.
Right, and she unseated Jeff Klein, who was in office for 14 years before that. He rarely had a Democratic challenger, I think not for a decade. So did she tell you what it was like running such a grassroots campaign and unseating such a powerful incumbent senator?
Yeah, so she really put her focus on getting to know her constituents and understanding the issues that they really cared about. She said that during the primary, she would wake up at 6 a.m. and head straight to a bus stop or a subway station and talk to the people that were there getting ready for their commute. She would go to meetings all day and not get to bed until about midnight. So it was a really grueling process, but in the end, it paid off. And in this next soundbite, the next clip that we play, she talks about that process.
All right, let's see it.
So, can you walk me through what your average day on the campaign trail is like? What gets you up in the morning? How do you wind down at night? How do you keep your energy going?
I keep my energy going because I have a lot of anger. So the anger is definitely, I try to channel it into passion because if I didn't, it would be probably very unhealthy. But that is definitely where I have my energy, one of the places where I get my energy source from. So I think it's probably dangerous to make me angry because then I will definitely channel it into action no matter what. So that's one of the things, but every day is different. And I would say that if you're looking at the primary to now, we're in definitely different territory in a better way. During the primary, every morning I would get up at 6 a.m. and I would go to a train station or a bus stop, and then I wouldn't be going to sleep until after midnight. And it was just knocking on doors and going into businesses and having meet and greets and fundraisers. It was just like unrelenting in a way that it felt unsustainable. And I think that if I had to push it one more week, if the primary was not September 13th, but the following week, I don't know if I could have made it, honestly, because we were going 7 days a week, almost every single hour of the day. But now we're in a different space because we can still go to the train station, still go to the bus stops, but we're welcomed into more places in the community, which is very exciting, and it's an opportunity for us to be able to meet more people and to reach more people in a very direct way.
So Julia, this election year, we have seen record-breaking numbers of women running for Congress and in local legislatures across the country. And in many cases, those women are taking on white men. So did Biaggi mention anything about that aspect of her campaign?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was really struck by when I was researching her is on her website, she has many photos of herself. Some of them she's in, strict political attire, but then other photos she's, more relaxed, casual, laid back. And so I asked her about that. I asked her, did you have any pushback when you were making those decisions? And she said when she started running, she would get questioned about everything, the way she wore her hair, what lipstick shade she wore. And she said at the end of the day, she realized that the way women are supposed to dress is a story that we're telling ourselves, and that a story that we didn't really have much input on. And so in this next clip, she explains that theory to us.
All right, let's see what she had to say.
The idea that you have to look a certain way is a story that we're telling ourselves. Like, who created the story? I don't know, but it's a narrative that's surrounding a lot of these industries. I remember early on, if I wore specific shoes or a specific tone of lipstick, I would get pushed back or be asked, oh, that's an interesting color of lipstick, or your hair should be in a ponytail. And then I would put my hair in a ponytail, and they would say, but not that ponytail. And so I was like, this is ridiculous. I have so many important things to tell everyone, and you're focusing on this. So it kind of brought me to this point where I was like, okay, reasonably, I have to knock on a lot of doors, talk to a lot of voters, I have to be moving all day long, and it's just not comfortable to be suited up, so to speak, every single day, all day long.
So Julia, obviously this is her first time running for office. She's a young woman. Is there anyone who inspired her, anyone in politics that she looks up to?
Yeah, so I asked her who are her idols in politics, and I thought her answer was really interesting. She said, just as much as she takes cues from the people that she looks up to, she also takes cues from people that she doesn't want to be like. And so she kind of explains that and gives us a couple names of people that she likes in this next clip.
That's interesting.
Let's hear it.
Is there anyone that you particularly look up to, that you think about more throughout the day, that you want to aspire to be like, or not necessarily model, but like an idol for you?
That's such a great question. Oh my gosh, I actually have not been asked this question at all as an inspiration. Okay, I think that I'm going to do it two ways, right?
Okay.
So there are people that I have met and have seen in the political sphere that I would never want to be like, right? Okay. And so that's actually I think it's just as important as the other
people that you don't want to be like.
The people that you don't want to be like because of the way that they act or the things that they say or the way that they think. And I think that that's really important. I think that there's another subset of people that I just see as they just move, they can move a mountain, basically. I think at the federal level, Elizabeth Warren is one of those people. She is not afraid to speak truth to power, and I know that's a very cliched term, but it's very true. She's not bought or sold. She doesn't, quite frankly, care. If the action that she's about to take is going to help the most people, she will do that and take that action.
So, Julia, Biaggi is likely going to win in November against Republican Richard Rubistello. What does she want politicians in Albany to think of her in her first, freshman class session?
That's right. So I asked her that question. I asked her, how do you hope people will perceive you? And there were two things in her answer that really stuck out to me. First thing she said was she hopes that people will see her as fierce. And then the second thing she said is she hopes that people will see her as emotionally intelligent. And I thought that was interesting because I feel like it kind of reflects the way she views politics at the national level and how she hopes to really bring the message back home to her constituents and what they care about. So she talks about that in this next clip.
Let's hear it.
I hope that people perceive me as someone who is just fierce. right? And also has an emotional intelligence. And I say that specifically because I think that in order to do this role effectively and to do it well, you've got to understand the policy, you have to have the relationships, you have to be willing to work with everybody and bring everyone to the table. And I think that that's one part of the job. I think the other part of the job is to exercise that muscle of emotional intelligence to say, you know what, I was in my district and I saw this really terrible problem. This school was crumbling, and that's heartbreaking. Or, you know, I talked to this woman and she shared with me that she was the victim of sexual violence. If you are someone who actually is present and are a mindful leader, I should say, then those things will touch you in a way that really motivates you to really fight hard for the people of the district in a different way than we've seen.
So Julia, we talked before about how she unseated the former leader of the IDC, Jeff Klein, and she's going to be heading to Albany at a time where politics are increasingly polarized. You know, the Senate is split basically down party lines, with either party hoping to grasp control come January when the legislature opens up again. Did she tell you anything, you know, her plans for when she gets there?
Right, so she said she does not want to have a repeat of the IDC. She said she wants, if there's ever a group of people that seem to be forming a caucus like that, she wants to attack it right away. But she also wants people to know that even though she is on the more progressive end of the Democratic Party, she's willing to work with everyone. And she kind of explains that in the next clip.
All right, let's see it.
The state Senate is going to see a big shift this year. The IDC is out and there's this new progressive wave coming in. How will you work to prevent divisions within the Senate?
That's a great question. One of the ways that I will work to prevent division is by making sure that I make it very clear to everyone, not just in the state Senate, but also in the Assembly, that I am willing to work with everyone and I'm excited to work with everybody. And I think that coming from that place, as opposed to a place of me versus you, instead of saying, hey, actually it's both of us, like this is only going to get done with all of us at the table, is I think one of the most effective ways to ensure that there isn't a division or there isn't a hesitation to want to work with the new individuals coming in. And hopefully with the Democratic majority in the state Senate, that will mean that we can at least guide the agenda for what we can pass and what we can think about passing.
Julia, with candidates like Biaggi, you know, we talked about how there's a record number of women, especially of Latino women, running for office, not just in New York, but across the country. You know, we have also Jessica Ramos in Queens, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of course, and Biaggi, just to name three. So I think they're all focusing on very progressive and very local issues. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about what Biaggi spoke to in her district?
That's right. So actually, Alexandria Biaggi and Ocasio-Cortez did a lot of campaigning together because their issues overlap a fair amount. Even some of their district, they have similar constituents in their districts. But Biaggi's focuses are on women's reproductive health. One of the first things she wants to do when she gets into office is pass what she calls the Reproductive Health Act, and that would codify Roe v. Wade in New York State. She's very passionate about that. She also believes that New York should have some form of single-payer health care. She thinks that health care is a right for all. And then we also discussed congestion pricing as a possible solution to fixing the subway, how to renovate the MTA, a lot of other progressive ideas that she supports.
And these aren't just things that are coming up in state Senate races. They also have been coming up in the gubernatorial race where, you know, in the only debate we had recently, you have Governor Cuomo accusing Republican Mark Molinaro of not supporting a woman's right to choose and not wanting to codify the Women's Health Act, and, you know, not supporting LGBT rights and not supporting single-payer health care despite wanting to expand mental health services. So these aren't just issues that are in the state Senate race. They are, you know, statewide. Right, and Natalie, I'm curious, with Pappas running against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you know, she pulled off this great upset of an establishment white male who was in politics. You know, he was well respected. People didn't like him. He wasn't an IDC member or anything Joe Crowley.
like that. Joe Crowley, exactly. So what is Pappas thinking, you know, as the district looks like it's leaning towards, you know, a young Latino woman? What is the district, or what is his thought on running as a white male against AOC?
We didn't really speak about that, but I think he's positive and hopeful. Although it does seem like it's going in Alexandria's favor, I think he's just trying to stay hopeful at this point and get the community to know what he's thinking and know what he's running on.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing those interviews with us. We look forward to following these races over the next few weeks as New Yorkers head to the polls on November 6th.
And if you're interested in keeping up with these and other races in New York, including the race for governor, subscribe to Prickly Politics on iTunes, SoundCloud, or wherever you get your podcasts. It's a podcast Casey and I host on the issues and candidates affecting New Yorkers like you.
We'd like to thank BronxNet, the Norwood News, and WFUV, and our guests Natalie Migliori and Julia Agos for making this collaboration possible. I'm Casey Candela.
And I'm Andrew Seeger.
Thanks for being with us.